Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second webinar in our 2019 RACV Victorian Tourism Awards webinar series. Today we are going to be looking at the changes that have been implemented this year with the awards program, and I'm joined today with Erin McLeod, General Manager of the Australian Tourism Industry Council. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
It's a few challenges that have happened this year in relation to the awards, and so we thought it's a good opportunity to actually run a webinar on what some of those changes are, to update experienced entrants around what they should be expecting this year. So Erin, I suppose just tell us a little bit about yourself so we get started, and maybe a little bit about ATIC so everyone gets a bit of an understanding of who you are and what you do.
Sure, absolutely. So the Australian Tourism Industry Council, or ATIC for short, is the national representative body for the tourism industry, and our members are the state and territory tourism industry councils. So VTIC is our member, and therefore via your membership with VTIC, we represent you as well at a federal level. So our role is to provide business development programs to the industry, as well as advocate and create policy on behalf of the tourism industry. So we have, in terms of our industry development, we have 3 programs that we own, and that is the accreditation program, the awards program, and star ratings. And these programs have all previously sat quite separately, but we've been going through quite a process of integration where we're putting them all under the one framework called the Quality Tourism Framework. And it's through this framework where businesses will be able to access any of those programs and more that we will continue to develop and add into there. And it's also the programs from which the states such as VTIC actually administer these programs on our behalf. So that's sort of it in a nutshell, really.
So what are we going to be looking at today? We're going to be looking at a few things. So we're going to go into a bit more detail about this integration of QTF and the Tourism Awards program. We're going to look at a couple of things that have been implemented this year as a minimum required of entry around the business standards and accommodation standards. There's been a slight change in the questions and the question sets in relation to question 3 and 5 specifically, and we're also introducing a new category at the state level this year, which is excellence in accessible tourism. So we'll talk about that as well. Now, as we go through this, everyone, if you do have any questions and things that you want to ask, feel free to pop those in, and we'll ask those as we go along as well. So please do that as we go through the process. So I suppose just going back, Erin, to a bit more about this integration of the QTF, can you just tell us a bit more about what QTF actually is, or the Quality Tourism Framework is?
So the Quality Tourism Framework is a program that delivers industry development. So the awards certainly sits under that, whilst the awards program is a way for us to recognise and celebrate businesses' excellence. It is also a way that businesses can develop and review their business. It is certainly designed to provide a way in which businesses can really get into what they have been, looking at what they've been achieving and looking at what they might like to do in the future. So the framework is looking at, as I said before, integrating the programs together, and what that means is businesses will still have opportunities to be recognised as accredited. They still have the opportunity to be star rated. They have the opportunity to enter into the awards process. But when we talk about integration, it's about trying to make a more seamless process for the business. So if you're engaged in one of those programs, then looking at how we can make it more efficient for you to then progress into any of the other programs. And we're also looking at the development of greater business programs within there, particularly through niche products within the accreditation. Looking at, we already have programs such as the camps and adventure activity niche accreditation, but we're also looking at other specialised modules or development programs that we can include into here. And again, it's about ways that we can support business development and then giving you the recognition for those.
Fantastic. So I suppose the way that the awards fits into the tourism framework, we're going to be a little bit more detail in relation to that now. So I suppose the main impact on tourism businesses or tourism award entrants this year really is the implementation of the business standards and the accommodation standards as a minimum requirement of entry. So I suppose, can you tell me a little bit more about the standards into the awards program, and what does this actually mean for entrants?
Yeah, sure. So the introduction of some business standards into the awards program has actually been something that we've been discussing for some time, and it's really about how do we safeguard the integrity of the awards program. And the introduction of business standards means that we can ensure that any business that enters into the awards, but particularly those that do reach to the finalist bronze, silver or gold level, are actually meeting basic business requirements. And it's not something that's ever been a part of the awards program before, but it's essentially a check for us to say that this business is operating legitimately and meeting expected industry standards. So we've introduced these business standards. It's actually not a scary thing. There is a checklist when you go onto the business standards page or the accommodation standards page that actually tells you what information you might need. It's a very simple process of saying yes or no, you've got certain items in place, or attaching specific documentation. It's not an overly difficult process to go through, and we've tried to make sure that we've really not made it too cumbersome for businesses to go through. The accommodation standards that have been introduced also sits in line with the need to safeguard the integrity of the process, but there's also some additional benefits to the accommodation standards, and that is that it helps us to ensure that businesses are in the right categories for some of the categories. So if you're entering into the deluxe or the luxury accommodation category, there's some minimum rating that you would need to meet, and that ensures that you are in the right category. And again, we have said that all businesses that enter into an accommodation category should be meeting at least a 3-star rating, with the exception of deluxe and luxury. Deluxe must be a 4 or a 4.5, and luxury is a 4.5 or 5. But that just again means that we have the standards of the accommodation industry are met within this. If a business is already accredited under the Australian Tourism Accreditation Program, or if they're already officially star rated, then you don't have to complete these questions again. If you're not, then the questions are there. You do then have the opportunity, if you would like to be recognised as an accredited business or a star rated business, you can use this to then progress through getting those, but there is a couple of other steps required to become officially accredited or officially star rated, but it certainly gives you the starting steps towards those as well.
Yeah, and it's not a requirement at the moment for a business to do that. They can just go through the process, do the business standards or the accommodation standards or both, and then have that standards done, and then they can basically go on and go through the process. I've actually just taken a screenshot here just to show you. So when you actually, I'll go back one. So when you actually land into the portal and go through to doing your nomination or starting your entry, this is the new home screen that you'll see. So for experienced entrants, you'll sort of notice that it has had a bit of a refresh this year, and you sort of navigate your way across the top there. So you've got the business standards tab, award submission tab, and then obviously the finalisation or the submission tab at the end. What we're sort of encouraging all entrants to do early on is to go through and just have a look at what the requirements are of the business standards. As Erin said, there is a checklist as part of the online system as well that is very user-friendly for you to be able to go away, have a look exactly what you need. But what you'll notice as well is that there are some question, a bit of repetitive questions between the award submission and the business standards questions. So we're very comfortable with you then while you're going through this process to actually just put in refer to award submission, or if you want to, you can just actually copy and paste what you've written for the award submission into the business standards. So once you get to this stage, have a bit of a look through the different tabs. Once you click on one of those tabs and things, you'll see it navigates fairly similarly to exactly the same way as it did for the award submission. So you can actually see down the bottom, you've got your tabs there that you need to work through. You can either work through them individually by clicking on the actual tabs down the bottom, or you can actually click the next section. Useful tool here, they'll actually highlight what is a requirement. Most of the fields are a necessary requirement, so that will just highlight what you have to answer and things like that, or things that you've missed. So go through, have a look. As Erin said, it's not meant to be an impost to actually entering an award submission, but really you'll see there's a lot of overlay, and a lot of that information is quite easy for you to upload and put into the system. So check that through. Now we do have a question, Erin, come through.
We do.
Erin just mentioned that luxury accom was 4.5 to 5 star. I thought it was 5. That's what if it says on the website. So, question around that?
Yeah. Look, I could have got that wrong as I said that. It is 5 star. I was quickly just trying to go into my documentation here to pull it up. Chris asked the question bit before I was ready. But no, sorry, you are correct that it is 5 star for luxury accommodation.
And then deluxe clearly is 4.5 star.
4 and 4.5 for deluxe. Apologies for that.
No worries. They're all good to clarify. Now, if you are an accommodation business, your, I suppose, portal will look a little different. You'll have an additional tab across the top. And what that tab will actually lead you into is the accommodation standards. So what this actually provides you with is a star rating equivalent, effectively. So as Erin mentioned, it'll actually define what particular category is best suited to you. So most businesses will have a really good understanding of what business or star rating equivalent they are actually equivalent to, whether it be that deluxe or the luxury. And they're probably the two main categories that this accommodation standards will have a great effect over, as most of the other accommodations have a minimum 3 star, except for standard accommodation, which is 3 to 4 star. That's correct, isn't it, Erin? So if you're in that 3 to 4 star category, then you enter standard. But with the likes of self-contained accommodation, then you can be a 3 star property or a 5 star property that enters into those categories.
I should also say that if you are entering into unique accommodation, then you don't actually have to go through the accommodation standards process, because the accommodation standards at the moment, we felt that there are so many unique accommodation businesses that it might have been difficult for you to apply your product to the question set going forward. Now, it's certainly something that we're looking at throughout this year as to how we can develop that for the unique accommodation sector, but for this year they don't have to, they won't have the accommodation standards, just the business standards.
Another question from me, which has just come to me, is around the new tourism. How does that affect accommodation businesses if they're a new tourism business?
Yeah, so if you're entering into the new tourism category, you won't need to do the accommodation standards, because as a new tourism category, you're entering into the categories around a new tourism development, and a rating doesn't apply to all of the products that are eligible to enter into that. So the reason we've got it into the accommodation categories is to get some like-minded comparison, whereas that's not valid in the new tourism category.
Yeah, Fantastic. So just really to clarify at a high level, if you're a accommodation business and entering one of the accommodation categories, you will need to complete both the accommodation standards and the business standards. If you're entering one of the other categories, then it will just be the business standards that you need to complete. If you are already lucky enough to be accredited or star rated, then that's already picked up by the system. If for some reason it's not been picking up, there is a slight challenge with the system where if the business name within ATAP or stars doesn't match exactly with the tourism awards, what you've put in there, it might not pick it up. So, but we can monitor that on the back end and actually see and actually align those things up as well. So if you think that you should have already got credit for having those, just reach out to myself, and actually we can have that conversation behind the scenes. So that's fantastic. We have another question there, Erin.
Although these are not compulsory this year, will these requirements be compulsory over the next 3 years? Are you referring to it being compulsory to be accredited or star rated? That's what I'm taking that to mean. Okay. At the moment, we don't have an intent to make it mandatory that you are accredited or star rated. The board certainly at this point in time have not committed to making that a mandatory process within the coming years. We at the moment just focusing on getting the integration of these standards into the program to ensure that these minimum business standards are being met.
And yeah, so it is just that requirement to, I suppose it's a minimum standard requirement, isn't it, as part of the awards process now that has been set at a national level. So every business now who's entering the Victorian Tourism Awards or their individual state awards will actually have to go through this process. So it is just becoming one of those minimum standards of entry, and whether a business then decides to go along and be accredited, and it's up to that business decision whether they do that. So one of the advantages, I suppose, of going down the accreditation line is that you'll then obviously be recognised as an accredited business. So if you're entering the awards next year, you won't need to necessarily fill the fields out again next year. It's my understanding that if you only enter it for the awards but do not go on, you'll have to come back in and enter those accommodation or business standards again next year, if I'm correct.
Yeah, at this stage, that's how the system works, because it's saving it within your awards submission, which year on year your awards submission is saved within the program for that current year, whereas if you've gone through the accreditation or the star ratings process and gone through the official component, it's progressed through into the system to where it needs to be, then that's got a year on year capability to be seen. Yeah.
Great. So just probably the main thing to be mindful of there is that if you are just entering the tourism awards, that you complete these standard questions as part of the tourism awards portal. And I'll just go back to that slide at the front. So make sure you just go clicking in through the middle slide there and not worrying about the two on the other side, because while they're connected, they're not actually connected.
Yeah, at the moment. So there's certainly a lot of work that we're doing on the framework, within the framework, and in fact you'll probably see within the coming weeks that even when you log in, it will actually look quite different. You won't actually have these three panels that you're seeing at the moment. You will log in and you will have a dashboard that has all of the programs and all of the available programs on there, and you can see where your status is within those specific programs. So what you see at the moment will have some changes in the coming weeks, but hopefully making it a lot more user-friendly for you all to use.
And the great thing that the guys have also implemented as well, I don't think I can see it on any of these tabs, but there are user manuals and things throughout the entire system. So it's easy enough to just click on those, download those, and it'll actually run you through step by step how do you actually complete, you know, whether it's the submission, whether it's the business standards, or whether it's the accommodation standards. So make sure you download those, have a bit of a look through and see how it's done. But from my working through of the system, it's actually pretty self-explanatory, and you just follow the steps through as you would with the award submission. So moving on to a couple of other changes which have been implemented this year, and there's probably the most significant change is in relation to question 3 and question 5 this year. While the questions in themselves are pretty much staying the same, there has been a bit of a change in the weighting. So Erin, do you just want to quickly talk about the changes that have been made through the marketing question and what is the sustainability question?
Yeah, sure. So overall, the marks that you can get for your submission has stayed the same, but what we actually have received a lot of feedback on and we've acted on for this year is that there was the marketing questions. There was really a question that had 2 questions in it, so we've pulled those questions apart, and marketing now has the 5 questions. But we recognise that now that we do really have more questions within the marketing section, we reduced the total marks you can get for sustainability and put those marks over to marketing. Now, it doesn't mean that sustainability has any less importance to us as a program, or that it should have any less importance for a business, but it was simply that in marketing we do at the moment have more questions, so we needed to apply more marks there. We are actually also, I think this is probably a good time to mention this, that we are also throughout this year doing quite a thorough review of all of the questions, and what we envision is that by the 2020 awards program is that the questions for each category will be a lot more specific to that category. At the moment, a lot of the questions are quite generic across most of the categories, but we're really looking at what we truly want a business to demonstrate particular to each category. So there's continued work being done on the awards program, and I'll go into some more in a little bit, but there's some really good developments that are happening for the awards program coming up too.
So really just to highlight what is changing this year, and this is across most categories, majority of the categories. On my next slide, I've got some exceptions which I'll show you, but previously question 3, marketing, D&E were one part of a question. And so basically how that's been split out is, or it used to read, describe the innovative marketing strategies you have implemented to encourage new and or repeat business and demonstrate the success of the initiatives outlined. So as you can see here, that's just been pulled out and been given equal weight. So when you're thinking about how if you're an experienced entrant, you should have this already answered as part of your submission, although you'll be looking at new innovations this year. So really this is an opportunity for you to set out how you've been innovative and how you've been successful in that. So what's the effect on question 5? Question 5, the question sets stay exactly the same. There's no changes there. There is just a reallocation of points. So each of the questions now within question 5 are worth 5 points. So again, when you're answering these questions, make sure you provide an equal weighting or enough weighting one particular question to another, based now on the relevant points that each of those categories have. As mentioned, there are a couple of categories, categories 3 and 4, which is major festivals and events and festival events. There is no change to the question, but there is a change in the question 3 weighting. So just be mindful of that you, again, as I sort of mentioned, are across that and given each of those individual sections now the appropriate response. The categories that aren't affected, destination marketing has a completely different question set, so it's not impacted there. Excellence in food tourism is a modified or a shorter submission anyway, so they have a slightly different question set. And then the state-based awards, which will be tourism, education and training, local government award for tourism, and our new category this year, excellence in accessible tourism, will be staying the same this year as it has always been. So that's the slight changes to the questions this year. Looking at our new category now, we have made the decision to introduce a new category, which is all around accessibility and excellence in accessible tourism. This is fairly similar to the food tourism category, where it has only an 8,000 word limit, so slightly shorter submission. So if you're any particular business can enter this. Anyone, as the descriptor says, there's categories open to a Victorian tourism business or attraction delivering tourism products or services that are welcoming for people of all abilities. Entrants must demonstrate how they have developed a tourism experience to become more accessible. So we're pleased to be introducing this award at a state level. South Australia, I think, we ran it for the first time last year.
Yep.
Has there been any other interest from any other states who are considering this category?
Yeah, New South Wales are also looking at introducing that for this year as well.
So what the general process is, generally categories get trialed at a state level first, and then once there's, I suppose, enough interest at a state level, then a category can get elevated up to the national level. So as I said, it's only been run for 1 year over in South Oz, so hopefully after the next iteration there might be an opportunity where we might see some movability on this one in whether it goes up to a national level and things like that. But at this stage for this year, it is only a state-based award, but obviously an important category and one that we really want to highlight as part of business excellence and tourism excellence.
Absolutely.
So we're going to just quickly highlight now some of the entrant support that we have got going on. So as a lot of you are aware, we are running a full webinar series for this year. So for the next 4 weeks, we've got a webinar running on the Thursday morning at 10:30. Next week we're going to start our insights component to this. We're actually going to look at each of the individual questions one-on-one. So next week we're doing question 1, tourism excellence insights, and I'll be joined next week by one of our most experienced judges, Stuart Topless, who'll be in here in the hot seat with me talking about what he wants to see from entrants when answering question 1. So make sure you jump onto the website and check out the and log in and check in and thanks, Eric. Just throwing me off the game. Register for those webinars that are coming up. We also are running a full business excellence workshop with the twist out in regional Victoria. So you can see the dates there. Again, make sure you register online for those workshops, as it's a great opportunity, one, to sort of come together, hear more about the awards program, but we're also partnering with state government, the tourism events and visitor economy branch, with some research they've done with Deloitte recently around tech disruption. So it should be a really good opportunity to come along and hear a bit more about the awards, but also hear about this tech disruption, as it's a fantastic topic to dive deep into. The added advantage as well is if you attend that workshop, you can actually use it as part of your award submission as professional development. So it's a good opportunity to come along and be a part of those sessions. There will be project officer support once again being delivered by the Regional Tourism Board. So if you're a new entrant, make sure you sign up, have a chat to your Regional Tourism Board around the opportunities that they have in relation to assisting entrants enter the awards this year. And for experienced entrants, we have our mentor program. So make sure that you jump online and download the mentor form. We've got a whole team of mentors ready to assist entrants with experienced entrants with fine-tuning their submission and trying to get them from, whether it was a silver at national up to a gold at national, it could be a silver at state level up to a gold, or a finalist, taking those next steps. So free programs that are available to you to help support you through the process of entering the awards for this year. I will say before I ask Erin my final question, just to Pan while she's drinking some water, if you have any questions out there, feel free to push them through now. As always, I'm available to anyone who has any questions that they want to take offline and ask post the webinar, so feel free to get in contact with myself. Email is just cporter@vtic.com.au. But I suppose before we do close, Erin, you know,
Yep.
We've touched on this a little bit, but the future of the program and, you know, other sort of changes on the horizon, there are some interesting discussions going on behind the scenes, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are changes that we'll be introducing over the coming years. You should see sometime in the coming weeks that we've been working with Review Pro, and all of our award businesses will get access to the Review Pro dashboard, where you'll be able to see what your consumer rating is across over 180 different platforms of feedback platforms. So they have an algorithm where they get all of the feedback and they give you a rating. And in time, we'll actually be incorporating what that rating is into the awards judging process. So that's actually introducing a consumer element into the awards program. We're not looking at introducing that until 2021 because there are complexities in the algorithm and how we do apply it. But we're certainly quite keen to make sure that the awards program itself develops and we continuously review it, and introducing a consumer element to it ensures that we look at all of the different elements that we can when we review and judge these businesses. So there is the Review Pro aspect. Then we have, as I said before, we'll be reviewing the questions and also any new categories that we think might be relevant, and just continuously looking at how we can review. Oh, and sorry, the other big one is we will have in time that if you are an accredited business, you will, and we've got questions within the awards program that are closely aligned. We will be looking at a way that we can pre-populate some of that information into your awards submission, and so that you go into your awards submission, and as an example, where it might be talking about target markets. If you've answered a question within accreditation around target markets, that information is pre-populated into your awards submission, into the relevant question. It will look different, so you know that it needs to be edited and reviewed, but it's just a way to ensure that, or to help a business cut down on the repeat information that they might be entering into the system.
And is there any, in relation to the modification or the review of the questions and the categories, is there any timeline in relation to that? Because obviously businesses start thinking about next year's tourism awards pretty early on, so.
Sorry, I'm battling a cold here. Look, the question sets for the 2020 program is something that's been working on at the moment. So we certainly envision that these will be done well before the start of next year's awards program. In fact, we're trying to work towards October being a date that we could get the board to sign off on those. So then that would give time for the states to be able to process and understand, and then to be able to start communicating with businesses as well.
Fantastic. So folks, that's pretty much brings us to the end of our webinar for today on what's new for 2019. As I said, we've got a whole webinar series for the next 3-4 weeks coming up. So if there's particular questions that you want some more insights into, make sure you do register for those. As mentioned though, these are all recorded and will be put up online and things, which will make great assets for you to be able to use in your time and in your leisure as we complete your submissions for this year. Obviously, big final shout out to our major partners in relation to the Tourism Awards, RACV as our naming rights partner, and our program partner, Visit Victoria. And all this wouldn't be possible without the great support from Web Firm that we're getting in pulling our webinar series together. So thank you everyone for logging on this morning and being a part of our webinar today. And you'll see me next week, and my counter colleague next week will be Stuart Topless. Thank you, Erin, for your time this morning. And yes, we'll continue to deliver this program. I think it's great, some of these changes that are coming in place, because it really just goes to show we are trying to refine this program and make it an accessible program for all businesses to enter, and you know, be able to celebrate success at both the state level and at the national level. So thank you everyone, we'll see you next week.
Great, thank you.